Hello and welcome to another SEO Hangout with Josh Bachynski. That is me. I am the disembodied voice speaking to you from beyond the SEO nether regions. I'm an SEO with 15 years experience of doing internet marketing, and I help businesses kill it on their SERPs. And today I'm going to provide for you a very fascinating, interesting piece called a correlation competition study. It's essentially an SEO competitive analysis on steroids, or what I also like to call how to rank on page 19. This will make sense in a couple seconds. Everyone does studies on how to rank on page 1. I did a study on how to rank on page 19. And we'll see how instructive that is in a second. So everyone knows that correlation is not causation. But correlation is the path to causation. Quite frankly, as human beings, all we have access to is correlation. All we can do is watch a number of events happening and draw conclusions between the events. No one can tell 100% what causation is or of a particular event. So all we have is correlation. And when it comes down to evidence in the SEO world, the evidence that we have access to, there's 3 levels of it for the best SEO evidence. One is observed experience, or SEO results. You do a bunch of stuff, and then you see what happens. The next is, of course, what Google and the gurus say, gurus such as myself, including, and never forget this, what benefits them, including myself. Whenever you're interpreting what Google says, what to do for SEO, or what SEO gurus say to do, you should always think of what benefits them. Both, A, what benefits Google, so what would they really want you to do, and what benefits the gurus, and so why are they saying this? But they all, for example, the ones that say, oh, buying links is still what you want to do, it just so happens they all sell links, right? Or they say, whatever it is they say, you have to factor that in to why they want to sell it. And just to be complete, total disclosure, I'm going to give you a sales pitch at the end of this. Warning, spoiler alert. And my sales strategy is to give the best free information possible, and then hopefully those of you who are too busy to do it yourself or don't want to do it yourself will hire me to do it. But for those of you who want to do it yourself, I give you all the free information that I can, and I let you go and run with that. So that's my full disclosure. And then finally, the best kind of SEO evidence that you have access to is ranking correlation studies. Again, these are the kind of correlation studies that Moz or Searchmetrics will do, where, for example, Moz will ask a bunch of experts what they think is going to rank in next year, and they make a statistical analysis on what these people say. And Searchmetrics does, being German, they do a much more programmatic study, of course. They do a programmatic study on what's ranking on actual search result pages, and they make a correlation out of that. However, there's a couple problems with both of those approaches. One, of course, you can't replicate the results. It's less sciencey if you can't replicate the results. Not practically anyway. It's not practical for you to try to replicate these results. And it's not really theoretically feasible unless you're in the position of Moz to survey 150 experts. Or for Searchmetrics, you have all these computers. You can run statistical analyses on the search results pages of like 10,000 to 100,000 different search results. But that's not even the main problem. The main problem is it's too general. It's not specific information for your niche. It is entirely possible, and in fact the patents suggest it is likely, that Google has different ranking algorithms, in some cases drastically different ranking algorithms, for different niches. So if you rank cars, for example, you don't necessarily care what ranks law sites, or vice versa. And this goes into a much more important topic, that this generalized approach does not account for query intent. What do I mean by that? Query intent is probably one of the most important SEO things that's going on right now. And it all revolves around the differences between these types of queries. And this is actually Google's nomenclature. So they talk about no queries or informational queries, no-do queries, queries where they want to know something and then probably do something, transactional queries or do queries where they want to do something, and then finally navigational queries. Or, for example, what are herbal pills? Best herbal pills, buy herbal pills, and then finally herbalpills.com. You'll also notice that this is in a bit of a funnel graphically. That's on purpose because this also correlates directly to the sales funnel. This is the top of the sales funnel where people are trying to gather information, and this is the very bottom, the sharp edge of the sales funnel, where they already have gathered the information, they want to go to a direct site, or they want to go back to a direct site. So this is extremely important, just as a side note, this is extremely important for understanding SEO moving forward, in 2015 moving forward, into 2016. You got to know where you want to rank, where you want to compete on this sales funnel. Of course, closer to the bottom of the sales funnel as people are closer to making a buying decision, so you might think you might want to rank there, but there's some good strategies for ranking in the middle of the sales funnel and some good strategies for ranking at the top of the sales funnel where you can kind of tell them a specific brand of herbal pills, for example, in this particular example, and they would take a little snake and ladder shortcut right to that, Josh's greatest herbal pill. Sorry, that didn't sound very good, but you just run with me for the example. You can tailor them for a particular product here, and they can circumvent all these other areas. So it's very important to get the correlation on the particular type of queries that you want to be doing because it's not specific enough and you can't replicate the results. Until now, we now have the ability, I now have my hands on a very powerful software where I can run a correlation-based competitive analysis for you, and you can get your own correlation-based competitive analysis on your own particular SERPs, on your own particular niches that you compete on. And so it'll be specific data that you can replicate, that you can compare to all the other data that you have available. So let me be clear. The correlation competition study, the CCS that I'm talking about, is not the same as ye olde competitive analysis. In the past, an SEO, if you wanted a competitive analysis, an SEO would do a search and then make wild guesses as to what possibly is ranking these various websites for this particular search. And the problem is it's already got a confirmation bias built into their procedure because they are only testing things they already think ranks websites, right? It is entirely possible, and based on the patents that have been released by Google and the information they've leaked to SEO gurus such as myself at conferences and in Hangouts and in private Hangouts and whatnot, that they are using tactics now that you don't have direct access to, like user metrics, for example. You don't have direct access to the clicks that they can see and the user metrics they can see. And so your guesses can be completely off if you're using kind of a ye olde SEO analysis model. The correlation competition study does not suffer from this bias, right? This software is very powerful. It tests currently over 250, and very soon it'll be over 300 on-page and SERP-based factors. And here's the key. We test everything we can possibly test. In this software, I can test everything you could possibly think of testing that we have access to. We can add weird stuff you may never have thought of, as opposed to the stuff you've already thought of and you think ranks. We can provide a correlation on factors for sites. So the way I like to do it is the way the software comes out of the box that I'm using, it checks page 1, spot 1 to 5, and gives a different kind of correlation, statistical analyses, your Spearmans, your whatever. I just use a simple percentage because it's easier to understand for people. And for me, quite frankly. On spot 1 to 5, on page 1, but I like to compare this to page 19 and see what is not ranking so well at all. And then the data gives you corroborating evidence to say what helps you rank on spot 1 to 5 and what helps you rank on spot 190 to 200, that is to say page 19. And those are the bad factors to avoid. The spot 1 to 5 factors are what you should be considering. And so the data starts to paint a very interesting picture. And so I repeat, and this is what it's actually going to look like in a couple of seconds when I show you the results of a study. I'm going to show you the results of a study that I did. So you can see the kind of powerful information you can get from this. And hopefully you can take this free information and use it as well. Because it should, although it will be specific to any NoDo queries. I'll show you in a second. So you want to consider these factors, and they're going to be blue with a percentage, a high percentage, or a higher percentage than these ones. And that's what you want to do. And these are the ones you want to avoid. The black ones with red are the ones that correlates with ranking on page 19. So if you want to rank on page 19, you follow these ones. You want to rank on page 1, you start seriously considering these ones, especially when they already cohere with your observed experience and or what Google and the gurus say. So remember 3 levels of evidence. I'm not saying, and those people who are going to come back and critique, no correlation, blah, 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 blah. I'm saying, guys, I'm just saying you want to consider these strongly. I'm not saying, I know correlation is not causation. I have a PhD in philosophy, all right? I know this very well. I can say it in Latin, post hoc ergo propter hoc. I know it. But I'm saying you want to consider these factors very carefully, especially when it coheres with Google, what Google's already saying to do and the gurus say to do, and vet it against what benefits them, and even possibly what observed experience shows to do. So this is where you get your hypotheses of what SEO experiments to test, and then when your observed correlation seems to cohere with this as well, then you know you've found a powerful factor. So this is a super powerful tool to cut through the SEO BS and the SEO questions and get down to the nitty-gritty of the factors in your particular niche, or at the very least your query space, whether you're trying to rank for informational queries or informational transactional or transactional queries. It'll tell you what it is you need to do. And as I said, the data is very fascinating. It's amazing. Like, I imagine for this young lady, ponies would be, or chocolate ice cream, whatever it is she's looking at. It's fascinating. The data really, so when you compare page 1 to page 19, it really starts to paint a picture, right? So this is what I'm going to show you. I'm going to show you the interesting positive factors, what correlates highest with spot 1 to 5 and not spot 190 to 200, and then interesting negative factors, what most of the sites at page 19 have that the sites at page 1 do not. And remember, I'm doing this on NoDo query set, just so you know, in a quote-unquote spammy affiliate skincare niche. I did it on a couple dozen queries, and I checked both page 1 and page 19. Stuff like best herbal supplements, best herbal pills, some specific name brand of herbal pills, skincare creams, specific name brands of skincare creams, but they're all in the NoDo query space. And so that's what you want to do. You don't want to blend no and NoDo because that's going to skew the results, right? You want to be specific. You can either be really specific just to your niche. Like, I sell red cars, that's all I do. Or I sell Fords, that's all I do. Okay, fine. You just do it on those queries if that's all the only places you want to compete. But you probably want to compete for more generic queries as well. But when you run an analysis, I would run the correlation competition study and to get all the huge correlation data just on the NoDo query space once, then on the no query space and on the do query space, just so you don't skew your results. And that's what I did for NoDo. Just so you know what I'm looking at. I'm looking at NoDo query space, specifically in spammy herbal pills and skincare kind of affiliate niches, because that's some niches that I like to use to test because I have a lot of experience in them, and it's good to see the results there. Okay, so here's the data. It's really interesting. Here's the positive factors, and again, the data paints a very interesting picture. So here's the first one, ye olde HTML factors. So look at this. So these are keyword matches in the web page meta description. The bytes to first match in the web page HTML source, so how long it took you to get to the point, how many bytes of data literally it took before the first keyword match in the HTML source. The matches in the web page emphasis tags, EM tags, matches in strong tags. These are just partial or broad or sentence matches. And then exact matches. So just nothing but the exact match keyword in web page list tags. So look at the correlation here. This is ranking with page 1, this is ranking with page 19. So page 1 shows a stronger correlation for all these, and page 19 shows a weaker correlation for all these. Ergo facto, right? It looks like these are good things to do for page 1, and these are good things to do for page 19, right? So this is what you want to do. You want to have exact matches in your list tags, and you want to have sentence broad partial matches in all else. And I would say don't stuff too many exact keywords, as I'll show you in a second. But you can do exact matches in your list tags, which makes sense. If people are looking for particular items, if those items are listed in italicized in a bulleted list, that makes sense that exact matches is what you would want. But you want sentence matches, broad matches, or partial matches and all that. So you don't want to just have, like, if strong tags was my keyword, I wouldn't want to just have that bolded. I want to have the whole sentence bolded and have the keyword in there, or a broad match or a partial match. So here's some image HTML factors. So take a look at this. So people on page 19 have a lot of images, more than page 1, but people on page 1 have more alt text, alt attributes in their images than people on page 19, a little bit more. And people on page 19 don't have alt text compared to people on page 1. So that starts to paint a picture, an interesting picture, that you should use alt attributes, and in this case I would say as labels only, because I'm going to have more data to tailor this later on. But you should use alt attributes on your pictures, and again, don't stuff them as I'm going to show. Because people on page 19 don't use alt, in this query space, don't use alt attributes, and people on page 1 do, and it seems to correlate with stronger rankings. So now we look at some on-page linking factors. These are fascinating as well. So it looks like more links are better, right? They have more do-follow links in the HTML source, way more. They have way more exact matches in their anchor tags. This is fascinating, right? People have been telling, you should tailor down your exact matches, but it was an SEO factor from the oldie days, and it still seems to be a huge SEO factor of having exact match link outs in your anchor tags. Again, I'm talking about your internal links. I'm not talking about your link outs, your outlinks. I'm not talking about your backlinks, right? This is just looking for on-page and SERP-based stuff so far. Of course, I can add in all that extra data after the fact. I'm just looking at the correlation competition study, which is all on-page and SERP-based factors. But it allows us to make educated guesses, like footprints allows you to make an educated guess as to what kind of animal left them. I'll show you that in a second. So exact matches in your internal links, in your anchor tags, and also they have a lot more no-follow links on page 1. So this all coheres with Guru's, Google, and what my observed experience shows. That more links are better. A bigger site is better if you can maintain the quality, and you can use exact match query if it is natural only. I would just add those caveats just for risk mitigation. I would label pages with links. So if I have a red apples page, the link should be red apples, right? And red apples is what I want to rank for, or very close to what I want to rank for. Again, don't overdo it. Only have one link for one target per page. Don't have editorial links on your page and navigational links. I'm just talking about essentially your main navigation. Again, I'll show you reasons why that is in a second. Okay, the social factors. This is fascinating. Look at this. Sites that have Google Plus page link outs, their Instagram page link outs, Facebook account link outs. I have Instagram twice. That's funny. Matches in their web page for Facebook, and Twitter account link outs. Especially Twitter is even a higher correlation, which is interesting that Google just had that direct pipe from Twitter and integrated it into their algorithm. These sites all on page 1 have correlative link outs to their social accounts. And so it coheres again with what Google's been telling us, what Guru's been telling us, and what the results of my SEO experiments anyway, that reciprocal links from your index page to your social page and vice versa are also important. Also, it seems to me in my experiments to have a strong social page. If you link out to a page that has nothing, just tumbleweeds blowing through it, that might not help. But looks like Google is using the social accounts as an off-page factor. Because again, not a lot of people are sharing links anymore. But they're discussing stuff on social. So again, before the critics start freaking out, this is just another piece of evidence in the fabric of evidence that you need to make an educated guess. But this is a very powerful piece in that fabric that gives you much more than opinion. It gives you correlation. Here's some more web design factors, right? So look at this. Sites that have JavaScript includes, more kilobytes in the web page style tags. They have CSS includes in their HTML source. And they have span tags. So using span tags to style up stuff that's important for that topic, they have a much higher ranking. This, I deduce by this information, this footprint, that this tells me you should have a robust modern design. It's more important to have a robust modern design. These are all telltale signs of a robust modern design, right? More JavaScript, more CSS, bigger CSS. That is a telltale sign of a robust modern design that helps you, and I think it correlates with what Google's been telling you to do for years, what I've been saying to do, to have these more higher quality websites on page 1. And now, I don't know if it's a direct, like Google will see these factors and rank you directly. I don't know if that is the case. I doubt it. But I think it's a telltale sign of having a robust modern design that the correlation backs up what Google's been telling you to do, and backs up what Guru's been telling you to do, and makes sense. It benefits Google, right? So it all makes sense. So if you've been wondering, should I have a robust modern design? The answer is yes, right? On all silos of evidence, the answer comes up yes. So do it. All right. Also, speaking of that, user metric factors. On page, you'd think can't test very much user metric factors. Not so. Look, that sites that have value attributes, value attribute is an attribute used mostly on HTML form tag stuff, right? And so sites that have HTML forms, this is a footprint of HTML forms being on that page that's ranking for NoDo queries. So unsurprisingly, queries that have NoDo intent like HTML forms to be on that page because they want to do something. And form is the biggest thing you would use to convert, right? You want to buy something, you had a form to fill out to convert, right? So it's very interesting that HTML forms end up on page 1 and that don't end up on page 19. So vis-a-vis, allow your user to do what it is they want to do. If it's buy, then they have to have an HTML form there. Also, there's very interesting static quality factors. Google has leaked tons of information about what is, in their opinion, actually low quality or high quality static factors. I have included them in this page here, the moralconcept.net/pandalist.html. I would suggest you go read it, and the only ones that got picked up in this particular query space, in this particular study, again, the data has a lot of noise, and then you have to separate out what looks interesting. It's like taking a photo of Pluto from Earth. You can't see everything, but the big things you start to make the details out. And so these are some of the big things. Having privacy links correlates strongly. Having phone numbers correlates strongly. Having copyrights on the web page correlates strongly. Stronger than page 19. You want to rank on page 1? You should consider having this stuff. That's how the data plays out. Okay, the question is, does HTTPS help? You know, they said it gives you a boost, but then people are saying not to do it. It doesn't seem to give you a boost at all. The correlation on this query space, on NoDo queries, seems to say yes. It correlates better with page 1 rankings as it does page 19 rankings. However, I've seen lots of people try to move to HTTPS and do it wrong and not do it right or not do it well. And even if you do it perfectly, your rankings are going to go down for a couple days, even a couple weeks. So keep in mind that it is also partially a trust factor. And if you do it, you're going to confuse Google whenever you make a URL change of any kind. And even if you do the perfect 301s and have Canonicals and all that thing. So don't do it at a high point in your sales cycle, and do it at a low point in your sales cycle, or when you're starting a new website, just go ahead and do it, because it doesn't matter. And make sure you get the EV certificate, so it's got a nice green bar up there, and choose a really cool business name. It'll make people appreciate your brand more, and other little tips like that. So be very careful how you do it, get SEO help when you do it, and make sure you do it right, and don't do it at a high point in your sales cycle. But it does seem to correlate with rankings. Google says it gives you a boost, so then now you've got the extra evidence to tell you that, yeah, you should do it. Same question for speed. Does speed help? And this is very fascinating. It doesn't seem to help at all. Lower milliseconds doesn't help at all. Milliseconds of a particular range, anyway, doesn't help at all on page 19, so they're all over the place. But they have milliseconds of a particular, and in this case, lower range on page 1 to a minor degree. So this is what this tells me is that, yes, what Google says is true. It says it helps a little bit. So it seems to help a little bit, right? The correlation coheres exactly with what Google is saying. That it doesn't matter at all on page 19, but when you approach page 1, it seems to matter a little bit. So lower milliseconds are better. And I'm going to summarize all this at the end as well. Finally, does authorship still help? Remember that authorship tag that Google used to have? The authorship markup and procedure that you would link to your social page, and you would link back exactly how the social pages are working that I showed you a couple of seconds ago. Well, the authorship markup still correlates with higher rankings, even though Google turned it off, quote unquote. So it makes sense. Even though Google said they turned it off, it still benefits Google to use that data if it's still there and they want to. So this is fascinating information. I would still use it. And again, I'm going to summarize how you would use it at the end. But the correlation bears it out. And finally, does URL naming matter? Look at this data. Keyword match in the document name, doesn't have to be exact match, just somewhere in the document name, seems to correlate very strongly with page 1 rankings and not with page 19 rankings. This makes perfect sense, right? If people want, it's a no-do query, they're looking for the best red apples, they want a page that has best red apples in the document name. It makes sense for Google to choose that. But only in the document name. I'll mention it's very interesting that the EMD data did not correlate strongly with any rankings, just the document name did. And having directories in the URL result path did correlate strongly. So do silos help? People talk about silos a lot. Do they help? Do they help? Yes, silos seem to help rank with page 1, but not anywhere nearly as much as naming the page after the query, at least on NoDo queries. So that's very fascinating, and that's definitely what you should be doing. And core here is again with the 3 levels of evidence. Okay, so those are all the positive factors out of the 300 or so factors that I was able to pull out that gave any meaningful information. All the rest are like 0% or like 10%, 10% for both. So it doesn't really tell any story, positive or negative, if you should be using it or not. But here's the stories for the negative factors, and they're equally as fascinating. So look at this. I mean, look at all the data here. Keyword frequency. I'll just go through this. Exact matches in H1 tags. Exact matches in H1 to H3 tags. Keywords in meta keywords. Leading matches, so the first left matches in web page title tag. Matches in the web page sentences. Matches in the title attributes. That's so on an anchor tag, for example, you have anchor tag A, href equals the URL, and title equals, this is the little thing that pops up when you move your mouse over it. Don't stuff keywords into it because it correlates with, unless you want to rank on page 19, because that's what all these guys are doing. And it's working well for them. They're getting on page 19, right? Matches in the web page title tag. That's the title tag that goes at the top. Matches in the top 1 keyword density. Matches in the top 5 words keyword density. Matches in the top 10 word keyword density. What this means is the software uses a statistical analysis to see what's the top 1 word keyword density, top 5 word keyword density, and top 10 word keyword density, and the matches in those words. And look, it correlates all highly with page 19 rankings and low with page 1, spot 1 to 5 rankings. And matches in the web page hrefs, and matches in the A tags, and matches in the web page all attributes. And finally, matches in the strong tags. A little bit. So what does this tell us? This tells us don't stuff exact match keywords in tags, except for your list tags and your anchor tags. And you have to do it naturally. I would label logically, right? Whatever is natural, whatever is logical. The strong and emphasis tags, you can only use sentence, partial, or broad match only. And the A tag, you can use exact match query that includes no follows, that would indicate a high no follow on page 1. If you remember a couple slides ago, indicates that they're using no follows as well. You could be using no follows to sculpt your page rank internally to make sure you do following to your most important pages or no following to non-important pages. And again, I'm going to draw stronger conclusions at the end of this when I looked at all the data. But look at all this data for keyword frequency. Clearly it shows that keyword stuffing in general correlates with page 19 rankings. Keyword stuffing is a page 19 ranking tactic, not a page 1 ranking tactic. Okay, not only that, but speaking of keyword stuffing, character limits. Look at the character limits. It doesn't show very strongly for meta description, only 5% higher, but in this query space, but it does show higher in web page title tag. So don't overstuff your snippet, right? Your meta description and your title tag, don't overstuff your snippet on the SERP. Is a direct issue, and or it could be a CTR issue as well. This doesn't measure if it's a direct factor or an indirect factor, it just measures whether or not it's a factor. So here's another very interesting one, right? Sometimes the information is counterintuitive, and that's what I love about the correlation study, is that it can confirm or it can deny your preconceived notions. So look at this. So there was a higher correlation with having canonicals in your web page, rel canonical tags in your web page, than on page 1, although it still did correlate very highly with spot 1 to 5 rankings. And my best hypothesis as to why this is happening is because, remember, people on page 19 are probably using a lot of auto-spam, auto-splog templates, right? That have canonicals that are probably doing it wrong. And Google has told us specifically, point blank, not to get canonicals wrong because it could have a problem in your crawling and ranking. So it looks like it does have a problem in crawling and ranking if you get it wrong. So just stuffing a canonical tag in there is not good enough. You got to make sure you get the canonical tag right. And in this case, you know, like half of the people are, or maybe half of the people are not, or not even using them. So don't canonical, for example, to a URL parameter. So if it has a question mark equals, you can't make that your canonical URL. It's got to be back to a page without a URL parameter. Or don't do it wrong. Cyclical is okay. If you have redapples.html and you do a canonical to redapples.html, that's fine. That's not wrong. But doing it wrong would be like if you have redapples.html and you canonical to question mark equals, you know, some URL parameter, or you canonical to a page that is not 90% the same. Remember, a canonical only works on a page that are editorially equivalent, right? They have to be editorially equivalent, and they have to be pretty much equivalent in the type of NoDo space that you're in, right? So you have to have as much equivalency as possible. This is what Google has said how the canonicals work. So this is what the factors of getting it wrong, I think, and this is what the result of getting it right. What about syndicated content? Syndicated content is a ranking tactic for page 19 more than it is for page 1. It's a slight lean towards page 19. I would avoid syndicated content if at all possible. The next question is, does URL length matter? URL length does matter, right? The longer there's more characters to less, the longer URL strings on page 19, and characters in URL host name, so in the domain name, longer on page 19 than on page 1. So a shorter, just what Google's been telling you, that Google's been telling us for years, and I've been saying for years, for 1.5 years at least, if not 2 years, that a shorter URL better. You have to have short URLs that are easy to remember, easy to type in, easy to click, right? That tell a good structure, that tell you exactly silos, again, that silo structure, so they can have the drop downs in the Google snippet. They like it, right? Anything they like, they're going to rank higher. Anything that's easier for them, they're going to rank higher. That's why SEO is again, talk about making it easy to crawl, making it easy to parse it, making it easy to understand it. Anything is easier for them, they're going to reward you. The correlation proves, again, slide against slide, that anything on page you make easier for them, they're going to reward you. And remember, closer to the root or index is better from the way the PageRank sculpting works, but also from apparently the way the correlation works. And so here's another fascinating, kind of thing that didn't make a lot of sense. Pagination is supposed to be good, right? No, it looks like pagination. If you have rel next prev in your web pages or rel pagination markup of any kind in your web pages, no one on these query spaces had it on page 1. Nobody. But a third of them had it on page 19. So it looks like, and that makes sense. Remember, this is a no-do query space I'm looking at. Google wants fewer clicks to task completion. They've put out videos on this, specifically how to get this, how to do this. And so again, we're getting coherence through all the 3 levels of evidence. You don't want to rel next prev a big long article on page 1 for no-do queries. For the no queries, for informational queries, I would expect this to be different. So there's my hypothesis to go and test. That's how science works, right? I would expect it to look different on the no queries, but on the no-do queries, on the query space I looked at, you do not want big long articles with rel next prev. You want to get to the point. You want to give them information. Preferably in a list tag seem to work the best. Yeah, it's great for these reasons. Boom, boom, boom. Here's buy it. HTML form, go. Above 500 pixels with a beautiful, robust design is perfectly fine as long as the speed is good, right? This is all this on-page data. The footprints are starting to paint a picture for other off-page algorithms. This software is so powerful, the information that it tells you. Finally, lastly, does Google Analytics help? Here's another very counterintuitive one that was very interesting. There's little indication of Google Analytics data being used positively. In fact, there's a slight lean to it being used negatively, as some gurus on the more black hat space suggest. And maybe this has a slight lean to it. Now, it's not a very strong correlation at all, only an 8% difference between the two. So you can't really draw too much out of that. And Google says they don't use it, and quite frankly, it would not benefit Google at all to use it. They might dip into it occasionally, but quite frankly, if you're not doing serious black hat stuff, you don't have to worry about it. And I would go install Google Analytics because it's a free tool, and it tells you a lot of really crucial information, SEO information. But if you're doing serious black hat stuff, you might want to consider not using it, especially if you have like a private blog network or you're playing around with stuff like that, which, Has pros and cons that I won't get into here, but you might want to consider not using it. But then you're going to have some other analytics package installed for the sites that you care whether they rank or not, because it's important. If you don't care if they rank or not, well, then it doesn't matter. Okay, so here's my summary, my big, huge summary from the information. First off, you want to use exact match query in list tags and your internal navigation only if it is natural. As close to you can get is natural, right? You'll know if it's natural or not. If it's clearly just a search query, then you don't want to use it. But if it's like best red apples or red apples and they're looking for red apples, then your navigation, your internal navigation structure should be red apples. And again, only in your navigation structure. I would not just start stuffing exact match query links in your text, because Google said specifically not to do that. And we saw the keyword stuffing is through the roof for ranking page 19 as opposed to page 1. So they've really tuned up their keyword stuffing algorithms. You cannot keyword stuff, but you still want to use exact match query in lists and your internal navigation, again, only if it's natural and only once per page, per link out to target. You want to use broad, partial match, or sentence match in strong or emphasis tags. It seems to rank higher. Nowhere else. Make sure you're using alt attributes on labels of all your pictures on your site. That correlates with stronger rankings. More links are better, and a bigger site, more link outs are better. You're being a better net citizen. Google has talked about doing that for well over a decade. And a bigger site is better, but again, only if you can maintain the quality. You need to maintain the quality. You can't keyword stuff. You have to make sure your user metrics are good. You have to make sure you don't run afoul of all those static panda factors that I mentioned before. Check out my website. I would no-follow most of your outlinks, because that no-follow correlates with rankings, and gurus have been talking about why you should no-follow your outlinks for over a decade for page sculpting reasons. And I would follow your link outs to your social pages on your index page, and to your authorship account on your sub pages. If it's any kind of no query or even a NoDo query, any kind of review kind of page, you want to have an authorship account. Again, remember, they won't do it on buying pages, and they won't do it on index pages. They will only account. Remember how it used to work? They would only count your authorship snippet on article style pages, review style pages. And you want to link back from your social pages. And again, it's not going to help you. In my experimentation, it's not going to help you at all. And other people's experimentation, it's not going to help at all if you have a dead social account. You want to have a well-used modern design and user interface. That correlates very, very well with page 1 rankings. You want to, and Google's been telling you to do it, and it just makes sense, so do it. Now you have all 3 levels of evidence telling you need to do it. You want to have as few clicks to order or do as possible. And that's, again, coming from the HTML forums and a couple other things. Again, read my Panda list on themoralconcept.net to avoid the static bad quality science. This particular correlation competition study on the NoDo spammy affiliate niches only showed 3 of them in particular come up, and could only test a few of them. We're adding more from this list all the time. We're adding as many factors as we can pretty soon. And of course, if I was doing this for you, I would also include these other factors like the ye olde backlink check and social check and things like that. Implement HTTPS when and if feasible. Again, be careful when you do it. Don't do it in a sales cycle, because you will lose rankings for a few days to a few weeks, even if you do it right. If you do it wrong, you could lose rankings much longer, if not permanently. You want to being above a 3-second load on page 1 is increasingly risky for user metric reasons. It's a slight factor, but again, I guarantee that and people have shown studies that the more you go above page 3, the lower your rankings get. I would use silo and document naming structure. So, for example, if you had joshsfruitemporium.com, get it? Josh's Fruit Emporium. Sorry, never mind. joshsfruitemporium.com/apples/red apples. That would be the best structure to take, but red apples is the most important. The document name is the most important thing. Don't overstuff your meta description and title tag. That correlated with page 19 rankings, not page 1 rankings. That makes sense. It helps Google. It helps the user. It just makes perfect sense to do it, so do it. And I would use this really handy website here that gives you a really good SERP emulator based on the pixel width. And I believe he changes it every time Google makes a change. If he doesn't, comment there and ask him. And that will tell you what it's going to look like on desktop. I don't know if he has a mobile emulator yet. That'd be great if he has a mobile emulator. If he doesn't, go there and comment and ask him to make it. Make sure you implement correct canonicals A cyclical canonical is perfectly fine. So if you have redapples.html, if you canonical to redapples.html is perfectly fine. And also that'll protect you against some negative SEO tactics to use URL parameters. However, if you have URL parameters, it did not correlate with rankings, remember? So I would not use URL parameters if you can at all avoid it. If you can pass data through any other method than URL parameters, I would do so because it did not correlate with higher rankings, and it leaves you, if you're serving 200 on URL parameters, it leaves you open to a lot of nasty negative SEO tactics that I happen to know about, both on the linking side and on the Panda side, on the quality side. So again, implement canonicals correctly to your root canonical page. They have to be more or less the same. Don't get it wrong, because it seems like it could very well have a detriment. And because we had high use of canonicals both on page 1 and page 19, but on page 19 they used them even more, and I speculate it's possibly because they're using them wrong and just default templates, and or on URL parameters, because there was a lot more URL parameters on those pages. So again, get it correct. The data seems to give you a very interesting picture of the actual nuts and bolts and how it works. Don't obviously use or link to syndicated content, and that would include, in my experience, HATM or H-entry schema. I've seen that in my correlations. I do SEO audits on a daily basis, and I always see this for sites that are having quality problems. Sorry, I was exaggerating. I don't always see it, but I often see HATM and H-entry in there too. Is it just correlation? I don't know. It is my observed correlation. Ranking page should be linked from the index, because that'll sculpt the most page rank to it, and you want the shortest URL structure possible, because that correlates with higher rankings as well, which Google has said. Independent people have done studies on, and this software backs up, at least in NoDo queries. And finally, Google Analytics is only useful to troubleshoot SEO issues. It doesn't seem to help rank at all. In fact, there's a slight lean to derank. But again, I wouldn't worry about that. It was only slight. And if you're not doing major black hat stuff, I don't see how it would hurt you at all in any way, shape, or form. You want to have good user metrics anyway. And Google would have, remember, what benefits Google? Google would have huge PR problems if we found out that they're using, if we have found out they're using Google Analytics data. So remember, this is not my opinion. This is not leaks from Google. This is not, me and my gurus talking back and forth. This is that plus correlation from powerful software that's going to check hundreds and hundreds of sites in a particular query space, particularly in your query space, so you know it relates to you specifically, and it's backed by correlation data. So this is the Achilles heel for Google, right? You've now found the keys to some SEO secrets here, that data that previously only big companies could enjoy, but now I can provide these kind of reports for you as well. So, as I said, I can do this for your niche. I would be happy to do this for your niche. Or if you just have general questions or you want to look at the data I looked at, I'd be happy to look at it, show you some of the information. I don't know if I would share the actual study I did, because it includes some niches, again, that clients of mine might be competing in. And it's because affiliates have to be a little bit protective of their niches because they make money on them, right? But I can definitely show you some of the data. Quite frankly, it'd be better to do it in your niches, right? And to show you how the data works. And I guarantee you will find information that will give you a huge edge and a huge leg up above your competition. Now it makes sense to do competitive correlation studies, not a competitive analysis, but competitive correlation studies, because it gives you a much more robust data than just my from the hip guess what could possibly be ranking these sites. So get it today before your competition does. Anyway, I'd be happy to do it for you. So again, if you have any questions, please email me at joshbachynski@gmail.com. You can also follow me at Twitter at joshbachynski, and you can watch more videos like this at youtube.com/jbachynski, JBACHYNS, where I'll put out more experimental results and more Google leaks and information like this I have coming out. My next video coming out after this, in about a week, should be my favorite SEO tools that I use to do SEO. People have been bugging me for years to do this, and so finally I'm going to get off my lazy butt and make that video for you. And it's really powerful, and that's really good for you as well. So email me if you have any questions, and again, my friends, good luck in the search. Bye-bye.